allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum this evening. Go ahead and move on to public participation. This is a 2-minute opportunity if any member of the public wants to address the board this evening. 2-minute opportunity. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to an update from Mary Randall, the Executive Director of Metro West, which I'm very excited for. So if you come on up.
Well, Chris and I were so excited to be here. We got here before you even unlocked the doors. So Mr. Hines had to rescue us and let us in. I'm very pleased to be with you again tonight, although I was teasing Jeff. I said, every time I have to do an update for you guys, it's the coldest day of the year. So he said he was happy to keep that tradition up once again. I'm going to keep this to about 5 minutes, so I'm sure you'll love me for that. Metro West is a nonprofit organization that was started exactly 10 years ago, and we serve 34 municipalities in Kane, Kendall, and DeKalb counties. We were formed to provide a united voice for our municipalities and to foster intergovernmental cooperation and to address regional issues. We work with a number of collaborative partners, which increases our effectiveness. The Northwest Planning Alliance, Metropolitan Mayors Caucus, other councils of government, CMAP, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, the Illinois Municipal League, and of course Kane, Kendall, and DeKalb County governments. We serve as an advocate for our municipalities. We monitor legislation that could affect you, rally the troops, often with the help of President Brawley, if there's something coming down the road that could negatively affect our municipalities. Some of the programs and events that we hold to which all of your elected officials and staff are welcome is our legislative breakfast or dinner in January, at which our state reps and senators present and address our concerns and let us know a bit about what they hope to accomplish. Newly elected officials orientation seminars, the Springfield Drive Down, State of the County's luncheon that'll be coming up in the spring. All 3 of our county board chairs address our mayors and managers at that event. Legislative barbecue and session review, the federal legislative event, and then of course the monthly board meetings. One of the things I'm proudest of is that we quickly respond to the needs of our members. If someone comes to us and says there's an issue that we're dealing with, then we make sure that we find a way of getting everyone together to address it. We've done everything from looking at wind energy and examining ways that municipalities are dealing with the difficult economy. The most recent one, which will start this next month, is a study of the Fox River and what will happen with dams in our municipalities along the Fox. We work with the other agencies, and throughout this 10 years, we've greatly increased our impact and influence in Springfield. Montgomery is actually a founding member of Metro West. You were there at the very beginning and have been with us all the way through. 2 of your presidents have served as our board president, Marilyn Michelini before, and now President Brawley is our vice president, which means he will serve as president of the board next year. And of course, Anne Marie Gora was very involved, and Jeff, before he became your administrator, was on my finance committee and was a great help to us on there. And I still plan on calling you whenever I have a financial question. Some of the things that we've done together with Montgomery, we negotiated animal control services contract with King County and each of the following renewals. Our 911 task force, and Chief Myers has helped us on that as well. They managed to allow for joint purchasing, to ironed out some issues with the county, and this led to fiber connections of the public safety answering points in King County. We managed to stop 4 years of automatic increases in the road impact fees for King County, which, of course, during the difficult economy was urgently needed. And your president has been the driving force behind what we call the non-home rule bill, Municipal Authority Modernization, we like to call it MAM. He actually came up with the idea and continues to work with us. Last year was kind of a matter of finding out, you know, where the enemies and the friends are, and sitting down with the opponents and working things out with them, and we hope to move that bill during this coming session. Metro West has been largely successful in protecting the local government distributive funds. And in some of the legislative victories that we've had, we managed to get the direct deposit bill through, which sounds really boring, but is important for local governments. Now the state is required to return the deposits of the state shared income tax income. That has to go to us within 60 days rather than having it drag out endlessly as it had started to do. This was a major initiative of Metro West and IML for several years. The governor signed that this summer. We also were able to get access for non-home rule communities to the sales tax information that is held by the Illinois Department of Revenue. That's very important for you, because then you know if indeed the sales tax revenue that you are due is coming to you, rather than having a ghost location in some other place. And we also got word tonight of another victory, and that was on trailer bill to Senate Bill 3507, which we called the tap-on fees cap bill. And we fought with Mayor Brawley's help to get an amendatory veto from the governor to remove municipalities from that bill. So now it addresses only townships. And President Brawley went down and spent some time with Senator McCarter and was able to get him to agree to accept that amendatory veto and not try to go back immediately and pull municipalities back into it. We also were able to defeat a bill that I call the county stormwater fees bill 3 times that would have allowed the counties to come in and enact different fees for both businesses and residents within your community without you having anything to say about it, which we didn't think was a good idea. One of the things that we're very proudest of is that we formed the Northwest Water Planning Alliance that expanded from our Metro West Water Conservation Task Force. This gives an independent voice to water supply management to municipalities and counties who receive water from ground and surface water sources other than Lake Michigan. And it's a voluntary partnership between the 5 councils of government and the 5 county governments, which we were told it could never happen, but we've managed to accomplish it. Metro West started this, and we still administer it. Pete is actually the chairman of their technical advisory committee, and Mayor Wisner chairs it, and I provide support and administration for them. But I just want to briefly thank you for your membership in Metro West, to thank you for being with us from the very beginning and helping us as we doubled our membership and gained an influence both in numbers and in terms of what we were able to accomplish for you in Springfield. Is that 5?
That's perfect. You guys have any questions of Mayor Randall? And I appreciate you coming. Obviously, I asked you to come tonight just to kind of present to this board, because we haven't seen your presentation yet, some of us, and kind of to highlight the value that we do get for being a member, not only a charter member, but continuing to be a member of Metro West going forward. The one thing that I wanted to say, and I think this board is aware of, a lot of this legislative stuff never dies. So the stormwater bill, they had to defeat 3 times. Our local distributive funds that we get, we fight that every single year, and until the state really figures out what they're going to do in balancing their budget, we're going to continue to hit on some of these same issues every year. So that's a huge value that we see there. And one thing, I think that's the first time you guys had seen that, but 2 months ago at Metro West, they decided to organize a Fox River Dam study group that I'll be involved with, I hope. And since we do obviously have the dam here, that we're concerned with the future of that. So that's all that I had. Do you guys have any questions?
All I can say is I remember, and I think I've mentioned this before, it was over 10 years ago, I went down to Springfield. And at that time, DuPage, so worried about Lake Michigan water, the DuPage group controlled everything down there and all the meetings, and I felt like we were a little tag-along village, just following them around from room to room. And they were the lobbyists that everybody listened to. And I feel now Metro West took that position. I think by expanding into more towns, they took the little with the big, where over there it was DuPage, but it was all the big towns with the big money. And now we're kind of like, in the Metro West, it's all the towns, including the big ones like St. Charles and Elgin, and especially Aurora. And then we also have all these little towns all over that belong to it. And I think that helps in the lobbyists. But looking at it, I think it's stronger than DuPage. At that time, I think DuPage had the House Speaker or something, it was theirs too, so he was kind of strong. But I think just the atmosphere is better now with Metro West.
Thank you. Well, we do work with DuPage mayors and managers on a number of issues, and I think in the beginning, we were kind of looked on as one of the baby cogs.
Yeah.
And they don't think of us as a baby anymore.
No.
Metro West has grown up. I thank all of you who have participated in any way in Metro West, and that, I think all of you have been involved in one way or another. And we certainly appreciate that and look forward to your continued involvement.
I have a question. Do you think the home rule light bill will get any further in the near future sessions of what's going on in Springfield? I know that there was some opposition to the bill, and I know that Attorney Anderson is in the process of rewriting that bill. Do you think with the changes that are being made that we will have less opposition? And do you think that we'll go a little bit further?
We certainly hope so. Both Steve Anderson and President Brawley have gone down to Springfield at different times and spoken with the opponents. This is what I like about what we're doing, is we're sitting down ahead of time and trying to work things out with them. So I hope that by sitting down and working through their objections, we'll be able to gain their support.
Well, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, we'll move on to items for discussion this evening. The first item, A, is Plan Commission recommendations. And I won't read through all of those. I'll just turn it over to Director Young for a presentation on these.
Heinz Building Supply has acquired Mike's Decks, which, as you know, is located in the village on Albright Road currently. Heinz plans to move their operation to 2175 Alcott Road and provide a wide range of building materials and supplies to the public. So it'll be a retail operation, as well as some wholesale, but primarily retail. Two requests have come before the Plan Commission at their last meeting. One was a rezoning of the property at 2175 Alcott from M2 to M1, general manufacturing, and this is because within the M1 district, we allow retail sales, but in the M2, because it's more of a heavy industrial area, we do not allow retail sales. So that's the reason for the rezoning. And then the second request is for a special use for outside storage. They want to take a smaller portion of their rear yard that abuts up to their parking lot before it gets into a detention area and provide some outside storage that will be screened. Staff noted that there were 25 parking spaces on the property from the previous owner. The technical reading of the code would require that 36 spaces be required, but since the previous use was established at 25, staff is recommending that we accept the current number of parking spaces, but monitor the use as it goes forward with the understanding that there is room to add some spaces later on and create a one-way drive where we have a two-way drive on the west side of the building now, and it could accomplish the additional parking spaces that would be needed to meet the square footage requirement with a one-way drive. So we feel that there's an option to expand in the future with the parking if needed. Staff has also asked for some landscape planting to take place in some of the empty planting beds that are in the front of the building, and also some buffer screening in the rear of the building because it does abut some residential areas outside of the village in the county. Plan Commission concurred with all these recommendations that the staff made and is recommending approval by the village board for both the rezoning from M2 to M1 and the special use for outside storage. We'd also request that that the village board look at this as essentially the first reading and take any action on this item at your meeting on the 24th instead of delaying anything until the first meeting in December for action.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions, staff, on this one?
Are there any potential problems, if this is zoned M2 and we're changing to M1, are there any potential other unforeseen problems that could arise in the future from changing from M2 to M1?
Well, there's always the possibility that somewhere in the future, if this use is gone in 15 years and somebody comes in and says, well, we want to do a heavy industrial use here, yes, that could take place. But we feel that it's a more appropriate zoning for that side of Alcott to go with the M1, and it facilitates what they want to take as a vacant building and make it usable again. So to answer your question, it could happen, but for today's uses, I think it's appropriate.
Could a future board, once it's zoned M1, could they change it back to M2?
Sure.
Okay.
Anybody can apply for any rezoning change, and a board in the future could take that action.
Is there anyone opposed to waiving the first reading at our next meeting, because we're talking about it tonight? And, okay. So, seeing that trustee Sperling isn't here, we'll add this on for items for separate action for our next meeting. So if there's anything that comes up between now and then, we can bring it up then. Does that work? Good. You want to move on? The second one is Zoning Board of Appeals recommendations, and again, back to Rich.
Okay, thank you. Fox Metro has requested a variance for a non-monopole, three-pole communication tower at their site located on the west side of South Lake Street. The property is currently zoned M1, and is surrounded by other non-residential uses, primarily M1 as well. Village code requires that all antenna towers be designed as a monopole, meaning not a lattice work type of structure with 3 or 4 individual poles. The proposal from Fox Metro is to put up a 60-foot-high communication tower. It is designed as an open lattice work 3-pole structure, so it technically does not meet the code requirements of a monopole. Staff believes that the proposed tower is not detrimental to the overall area with the M1 uses in the vicinity, and has recommended approval of this variance. The Plan Commission concurred and added that this is a public health service organization that's providing a use, and felt that it was appropriate to look at the non-detrimental nature of the proposed variance. Again, this is an item that, if it's the board's desire, we would like to waive the second reading and ask you to take action on this item at the November 24th regular meeting.
Are there any questions?
Justice Sperling and I were at that planning meeting, and she was very supportive of this. In fact, I think she even brought it up that maybe we'd put that on a consent agenda so Tom wouldn't have to be coming back all the time, but she isn't here. I'm not speaking for her, but that night she thought that, and I don't know if it's appropriate to put it on the consent agenda if nobody has any problems with it. That way Tom wouldn't have to come back.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I'm not opposed to doing that. If she would like to pull that, she can let us know that ahead of time, but.
Like I say, she was supportive of it that night.
Yeah, I think Mildred really hit it on the head. This isn't like a cell phone tower and that. It's for another governmental agency looking for better communication. So I'm shocked at the total weight of this thing is 153 pounds, 60 feet tall.
Lean and mean.
That's unbelievable. So if there aren't any other comments on this, we'll add this to consent and move forward. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item C, which is the meeting room policy, and there's attachment, and with that, I'll ask Administrator Zolfel for a summary on this one.
Thank you, President Brawley. There's one specific area that I wanted to cover with you tonight, just to get some clarification from you. It's on page 3, under the section titled Reservations, and actually, it's just the first sentence there. It says, "The multipurpose room is available for reservations Monday through Thursday from 8 to 10, and Saturday from 9 to 5. This came up because we had a Girl Scout troop recently that contacted us looking for a place to meet. I don't know if it's every other Friday or one Friday a month. And as we looked into it, you can see that Friday currently is not an option to do that. Neither is Sunday. As we were talking about it, we have groups, one including the VFW Ladies Auxiliary, who has used our building on Sundays for their meetings. So technically it is against our current policy. And so thought it'd be nice to come back and say, would you like to amend, the hours that the building can be used, to add some time on Friday or on Sunday? And if not, that's fine. We'll just move forward with it though and then stop using it on those days.
Can you go over how the person, or who locks the door, unlocks the door, who turns off the lights, who turns on the lights? Can you go over that?
Generally, Debbie would set the doors to open at the time we want, and then knowing how long it is, would set them to lock afterwards. So we usually have that done automatically ahead of time.
And the lights are handled by the people that run it?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably left, we'd probably leave them on and when they come in.
I know they've called me many a times to open the door for them,
Right,
the homeowner association where I'm at.
we've had times where
Yeah.
where they haven't opened.
And there's been times where the lights are left on, overnight, over a weekend, so it's.
We could maybe put a motion-sensitive switch in that area, so they would go off after a period.
Certainly look, I know a lot of our areas do, but some of the rooms
Yeah.
may not.
I'm supportive of it if we can do it without disrupting the staff activity.
And you can see some of the hours we currently have are after, hours that staff would be here, because we go till 10 o'clock on the other weeknights, so, I mean, we're managing it now.
I think the comment was made that the polling activity would maybe dictate a slightly different schedule too.
Yeah, I mean, they were here on Fridays, obviously when we had the early voting going on. So again, they were,
I think they're meeting down there tonight, too.
If the board would entertain the rules for the use of that room, maybe should be revisited too. There are 3 activities that are currently banned that I would not have a problem with allowing. Use for private social gatherings, religious or other religious purpose meetings, and political meetings, not political fundraisers, but just meetings that relate to a political activity. It could be a referendum, petition drive. It could be an elected official that wants to meet with some residents and finds that to be a convenient place.
I would also like to change it to have the ladies auxiliary use, like they have on a Sunday. Because VFW's done a lot for the village of Montgomery, and I think we should let them use that on a Sunday. And if they need somebody to open up, I'll open up for them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stan, to your point, I think that there may be some First Amendment concerns with allowing the political activity on the village property, even with the example you mentioned with a candidate meeting with residents, that could be considered a violation of the statute, prohibiting political activities on governmental property. So that would be questionable, whether that would run afoul of that.
Okay.
does it
It's something
matter,
that we would look at.
I mean, does it matter if it's like somebody who's running for office or somebody who's already in office? I know we had, I believe Kay Hatcher has, like, did office hours here one time.
Yeah, I think a candidate, I think that's something that's specifically prohibited, a candidate meeting or promoting, their campaign or getting people to sign their ballots, things like that would be
That-
prohibited.
That's the one that I see, the political fundraising activities, I think should be amended to be "and campaigning." And I know that debate came up previously, but if we included "and campaigning," that
Right. that
puts
would-
it right in there. It takes care of it right up front.
Well,
No
we-
campaigning.
We discussed that, and refresh my memory, what did we decide as far as a board on the campaigning? Was it just this room, or was it the entire village
No,
hall property?
it's the whole property.
Okay.
And I
By
don't think we-
statute.
I don't think, we didn't.
We didn't do anything because by statute, but I think by adding that verbiage in, it definitely clarifies. And then you could almost remove the individual political candidates or partisan political activities, because that kind of implies that Kay Hatcher can't use it, when in fact, that's allowable. Because she's using one of the government offices, just a different one. The private social gatherings, I did a little thinking about this. Stan and I had a conversation about it, and in theory, I don't have a problem with that, but then in thinking about it, people want to, because we have a homeowner association clubhouse, and it's booked almost every weekend with some form of bridal shower and all kinds of other activities, and now you open it up to cleanup and all these other activities, and it's no longer being used for, I think it opens it up to be used for something other than what we may think of as a private social gathering. It could become booked every Sunday for a bridal shower.
Well, we talk a lot about attracting traffic to downtown and getting people acquainted with the downtown area. That's still a viable use for our public building.
What,
I've seen the
what's,
cleanup after some of these parties, though, and even over at Park District at Austin Park, certain groups can use it, it looks great, and other groups use it, and it looks like a bomb hit it with confetti and everything else. And the cleanup, since Debbie's here, have we ever had any problems with people? I know we have a security deposit and all that in some cases, but have we ever had a problem down there?
We haven't ever had a problem, but like you said, it's always just been a public organization who has used it before. We haven't had private groups use it.
but a public organization can be just as messy as a private group. I mean, it's just how how respectful are you of the place that you're in, and I don't have any problems with the private social gatherings. Do you foresee any problems with the religious aspect?
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention too. That also has some First Amendment implications. I think if you were to open it up to religious groups, you would have to open it up obviously to all religious groups so that you couldn't deny one group access to your meeting room but allow another religion access. That could be considered like viewpoint discrimination, which could violate the First Amendment. So I think as long as you're consistent in that regard, I think either way, you're fine prohibiting it or allowing it as long as you're consistent.
Does that mean that we couldn't let the VFW use that on a Sunday?
No, because that wouldn't be either of these three.
Okay.
They would still be able to. And I'm not hearing, just to go back to that real quick, I'm not hearing any opposition to the time change that staff's proposing or Sunday. Trustee Hines mentioned, I think that there's general consensus
Yeah, I
to,
would like to
that we
see
can do that.
What the board thinks about that.
The private religion and political, I guess our attorneys probably need to look into the other two a little bit more. The private one, the only comment I would make is that Spiegelheim Park District has rooms that they rent out, and we've had parties there before. And so I can see that carrying over in other governments. Only thing here is, we just have just the one room available for residents and for public meeting space for actual meetings. So then if it was booked and our HOAs couldn't meet there, and that would be my only concern. But maybe if we can have our attorneys look into this, and we'll chat about this at a future meeting. Think about the private stuff a little bit. Does that make sense?
I'm agreeable to the time changes, though. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have no problem with
Is
time
it
change.
sufficient to say, this is just a policy, so moving forward, staff would be able to rent out the room based on this, and then we'll make any changes in the future?
Yep, then we'll have Steve's office look into the other, and we'll bring that back to you.
Just maybe one last comment. Probably most of the communities east of the river do not have clubhouses or communal facilities where this could fill a role for them if they choose to use it, and a non-restaurant type venue where they could have a quieter atmosphere.
And I think maybe only Lakewood Creek has actual meeting space. It's the only one.
My initial opinion is I'm fine with the private social gatherings. I'm fine with the religious, as long as it's open to all religions. And I would eliminate any of the political. But that's my opinion.
All right, thank you. If there's no other comment on that, I think staff has direction. We can move forward to item D, which is the employee manual. And Justin, you got this one?
Yes. Thank you, Village President Brawley. Staff had presented the employee manual to the board at the October 13th and October 27th board meetings. Based on feedback from the board at the time, staff has taken the change in hours at Village Hall out of the manual. We may bring back other options to the board at a future date. We are not planning on doing anything right now. From the manual that was presented, we've narrowed it down to 5 policy issues that staff is looking for direction on. And what I'd like to do is discuss each one individually, get comments or questions on each item, and if possible, come to a consensus on each item. So I'm going to just present each one individually and then ask for questions. So the first one is the drug-free workplace. The current manual, whether it is someone that refuses to cooperate, whether someone possesses or consumes illegal drugs, possesses paraphernalia or alcoholic beverages on village premises, or someone who's been convicted of, sentenced for, or pled no contest, The current manual states that they can be disciplined up to and including termination. The two union contracts, the MAP contract, there are two different items here. The first one is if an employee tests positive for alcohol or the abuse of a prescribed drug, so a legal drug, they will be given the option on a one-time basis of seeking treatment. So based upon the previous discussions, that would be a second chance policy for legal drugs only. There is a prohibition on illegal drugs, abuse of prescribed drugs, or failure to report side effects of a medication that you are taking, possession of alcohol while on duty, or influence of alcohol. That is grounds for immediate termination. So what that is looking at is illegal drugs, a zero tolerance on the illegal, or several other items here, specifically alcohol, while on duty. The public work contract, IUOE, it is the same as the current manual. It states whether it's illegal, whether it's alcohol, whether it's prescriptions, that it is grounds for discipline up to and including termination. So, to come down to the new manual, we had first presented zero tolerance, and the only other two options that we are looking at right now would be legal drugs only. So we would provide a second chance for alcohol under a certain limit and for compassionate use of cannabis or medicinal marijuana. Positive tests for all illegal drugs would result in immediate discharge or termination. The only other option right now would be a second chance for all drugs, whether legal or illegal. So if the board has questions, comments, I will take those at this time.
I have thoughts on this. First item. My first question is the new manual. Is it providing, I guess, the reason for the change? I'm more inclined to feel towards the status quo in the way that we have it. It seems like it gives a little bit more, I guess, flexibility to staff on certain issues, depending on certain situations. Is there an increased level of protection? I guess, what's the reason for changing it?
The reason for changing it was there is no true direction. It just says discipline up to and including termination. So right now, if somebody has illegal drugs, there is room there for them to solely be disciplined. So we wanted to get more specific about whether it was a certain type of drug that the village board was okay with, or provided a little bit more direction for staff when we went to look at each particular situation.
I think it goes to help ensure that all employees are treated the same. Because based on that, as it is currently, you could have two employees found for the same drug, might not necessarily get the same punishment depending, because it just says up to and including termination. So you're taking some of that out of it and making sure there's equality across, I guess, would be one of the things you do this way.
Who's making this decision? Would that be
I
you?
think ultimately it would go to me, yes.
Ultimately, it would be you to you, correct? So you don't think that having a little gray area in the discretion would be a benefit?
I think so, but you've got to look at the long term. I mean, I feel that I would treat the situations the same. I can't speak for things going forward.
Well, in the new manual, option I, the first option, the legal drugs only, you're providing a second chance for compassionate use of cannabis and also alcohol. I mean, I would think that is the gray area. I mean, I've managed to go 41 years and never smoked pot, You know, I'm 41 years old, and some people may say that's my problem. I never have. But when you're caught with illegal drugs, if I'm walking around with a pound of cocaine or a kilo of cocaine, are we going to give, or do I expect you to give me another chance? No.
Wouldn't the legal aspects be that if you gave this guy a second chance of, if he had a pound of cocaine, walk around, you give him another chance, and then he does something really stupid and starts shooting people and ends up in a real problem of that person coming back to the village and saying you should have fired him in the first place on grounds?
I mean, I guess that situation could arise. I guess it would just depend on the circumstances, you know, of what happened and, you know, the circumstances of what that employee was caught with, and how the village responded to it, you know, but I think that's ultimately a policy decision.
I'm leaning towards, like Matt said, the status quo, because it's pretty specific, and it talks about paraphernalia, which the new one doesn't discuss. I mean, if you've got your pot pipe in the glove compartment of the public works vehicle, that's a problem for all of us. So this addresses that. The new manual doesn't address that
The
at
new
all.
If I can, the new manual, this is just a very quick summary. We didn't want to have our attorneys write something that the board didn't want, so we haven't actually written these two areas yet. So it would address the paraphernalia, it would address the other items here, but in general, what we're looking for is direction on, does the board want to have a second chance for illegal drugs or a second chance for all? And that all would include the paraphernalia and so forth.
I would favor making a distinction between having drugs and a test for drugs. And my concern about the test for drugs all along has been that's a human process, and any human process is subject to flaw. So on the strength of one test, I would not like to take someone's job away. I would prefer to have another test, perhaps even by a different vendor. But if you are in possession of something that is illegal in the state of Illinois, that's a different scenario and subject to different punishment, in my view. So I would be very careful to make them different circumstances.
We have talked to our vendor that does the testing for drugs and alcohol. Whenever there is a test done by them, it is a split test, so one test is done on site, and the split sample, if it comes back either inconclusive or positive, it will be sent off-site to a certified lab, completely separate organization, and tested by that second lab. So along the lines of what you're saying, by a separate organization. And that's the reason that they do a split sample.
The other issue I'd like to clarify, going back to the introduction of this conversation, the phrase "staff presented" can mean that staff has discussed this and there is consensus on it, or it can mean that you're presenting this and there are people on staff that don't agree. How would you describe what staff presented means here?
I mean, I can handle that. We have had discussions at the staff level. There is not full agreement on all of these issues because, you know, some things are more important to some of the people than the others. We try to have those conversations, take into consideration everybody's opinion, and then I worked with Justin on bringing forward what we felt was in the best interest of the village overall. Even though I would say not everybody would be happy with all of these proposals.
Just as we sometimes have a chance to go to a plan commission meeting and observe their deliberations, I am getting a strong sense that I would like to hear some of the issues that our staff have raised.
Yeah, on the one we're on now, I don't think we had any real disagreement. I think what it comes down to, I mean, on this one, I guess I've heard two speak up that they'd be in favor of the status quo, that you feel that covers covers what we're trying to do. A second chance can be provided, but it doesn't have to be, depending on the situation, and it provides some flexibility, I guess. If the others agree with that, then, we can
But-
certainly move forward with that, but if there's,
But in the status quo, it gives, it says, will be disciplined up to and including termination, and that's for illegal drugs. And I don't agree with that. So I guess my opinion is new manual, letter I, legal drugs only.
okay,
And the Public Works and Police is set by the contract, so we can't modify those.
correct.
So the non-union employees would actually be under more strict regulations that way. Because the other ones, I think, are both up to and including, oh no, grounds for immediate
Yeah,
termination.
Police, if it's an illegal drug, it's immediate.
Okay. I know we're never going to have them all the same, but
Right.
I want to keep it equitable.
So now I've heard two for the status quo and one who likes new manual, number
3 for status quo.
3 for status quo.
Any, Pete?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, when I worked at CAP, but they had a couple incidents with, not the union employees, but office and foremans and that, and they sent him a rehabilitation. And then after he went through rehabilitation, he came back, but and if he started the drugs again, whatever they were on, then they were terminated.
Yeah.
It's
You're
basically.
just helping the person out by sending him to rehabilitation. If you just fire him, he's just going to still take drugs. So give him a chance. I don't know. That's what I think.
Okay.
I agree with Steve under giving legal drugs, number 1, second chance for alcohol.
Well, let's, let's define legal drugs here, okay? I see alcohol, I see cannabis, but in my instance, when I had cancer, I was on,
Right, prescription drugs would be,
are prescription drugs considered legal?
If you have a
If they're-
prescription for 'em,
prescription for them,
And
yes.
say I get hooked on whatever I was on.
Then they're illegal.
I don't know.
then they become, once they're not prescribed to you anymore, they become illegal.
And I don't think our policy would need to define that. That would all be defined by state statute, I would think, or somebody else that would define what's legal, what's considered legal and not.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm perfectly fine with the status quo, but I would request that Roman numeral 3 be amended to read, work sites will be disciplined or up to and including termination of employment. To read the same as the first 2 Roman numerals. I think it's an anomaly that it's off.
And whatever option is the majority decision of the board, if it's the current manual or the new manual I, if we'll give 1 chance, we're not going to give 2. This isn't going to be Billy Bob's in rehab for the 10th time, and we're still trying to get him off this. You got a one-time deal to straighten up. You better take advantage of the chance.
So, Trustee Hines, would you say that you agree more with the way that it currently is, which kind of gives him the discretion up, if somebody's caught with something, up to and including firing somebody? Or would you like to see us,
I think he should get him a second chance, and then after that, he's out.
yeah,
That's my opinion.
okay. I was just trying to get a fourth, so that way we don't have to delve into it again. I'd like to say that we can move forward with the status quo, because there's 3 of us here that have directly said that. If Trustee Spurling has different thoughts on this, then we'll discuss it at the next meeting. Does that seem right?
And there are 4.
4 for what?
Oh, 3 board plus you.
There's three?
for status quo.
Oh,
Stan, myself, you, and Pete.
I wasn't sure where,
yeah, there's three of us for sure. I wasn't exactly clear on his, but,
Well, his is, if he's offering up the second chance, that's got to be the status quo, because Roman numeral 1 says you're fired.
But there's a second chance on,
Yeah, there's a second.
you get a
chance under
second
I,
chance
too.
on Roman numeral,
for legal.
on I and new manual.
It's just saying legal, and you guys are saying you do it with illegal. And I can't take illegal, I'm sorry. If a guy's on cocaine, he's on cocaine. I mean, you're gonna have a heart, or heroin's worse. You can give him a second chance, I don't think he's gonna do it.
Well, fire him. Again,
He's got the
he's
description.
got the discretion, if, you know what I mean? There's a big difference between somebody walking in with track marks, you know, all strung out, and somebody who, you know, may still be a little hungover from the night before. There's a big difference. That's where I think you need the gray area, the discretion.
And if you want them tested, you shouldn't tell the person, we're gonna test you tomorrow. Just take them at random, right then and there. Write down, get them tested right away. Not to say, what, we're gonna test you tomorrow.
and I think we're all talking the same thing here. I don't think the board or staff really advocates or wants any of the employees to violate any of this. It's just a matter of how we word it. So we'll move forward with the status quo.
I will talk to trustee Spurling.
Yeah.
In the meantime, prior to the meeting, just so that I know if there's an
Mhm.
issue and I can let the board know.
Okay. All right, item 2.
Item 2 is workplace search policy. There are the current manual versus the new manual. The new manual is expanded from what it was. There is nothing in either one of the union contracts on this, so it just goes from the current manual to the new manual. The current manual, the wording in the current manual is all included in the new manual. It's just been expanded. The one thing I do want to point out on the current manual, it's about halfway through. It says, if personal belongings are to be searched, the village will make every effort to have the employee present. Those words are not specifically included in the new manual. However, what staff did include was searches and inspections may be conducted at any time at the discretion of the village. That is what was presented previously to the board. We did add all inspections shall be conducted by certified police personnel at the direction of the chief of police or his designee. So this is not just someone from staff, Jeff, myself, Megan, doing an inspection. We would be contacting the police department, and they are the ones that would be doing the inspection. So if the board has any questions, I can certainly address them, but essentially what we did was we took the current manual and expanded on it.
My recollection is the big question from last time was who would be doing the searches, that kind of thing. So we've tried to say now that it would be, you know, one of the sworn police officers under, you know, led by the chief then. And again, this is one that I don't think as staff we had really disagreement amongst ourselves, so.
Does this extend to vehicles?
Extend to the,
You mean vehicles on village property if they're parked in the parking lot?
I believe it
Does.
does.
Yes.
Did I
It
miss
does.
that?
Roman numeral 1, about the three-quarters of the way through. Village property, including village buildings and vehicles.
Well, let's ask the village attorney, do you see any problems here in relation to unreasonable search and seizure?
I think, do you want to address that one, Chief?
Yeah, absolutely. No, to answer your question, it'll be fine. Mhm. You have to have a policy in place, or we won't be able to do it.
The new one does say locked or unlocked, where the old one didn't say that, and that makes a big difference. In a lot of cars, anything.
Why would the employees be sent to the finance department for discipline? You have a big stick there that we don't know about, or?
Big paddle.
There's a paddle.
If you would like, we can change that to human resources. We had included finance department because that's where human resources is located in. We can certainly change that.
I mean, the discipline itself wouldn't be coming from finance. It would be, I mean, again, ultimately, that
It
would.
is painful sometimes to, I'll never mind, but.
I thought perhaps you had to get your cut of the ill-gotten gains. That's why you had to go to the finance department. So I read that in there, too.
No.
The discipline is you have to work on the budget for next year.
We can certainly change
I
that
think that should,
to
it should read human resources.
human resources or village administrator.
I'm not hearing any objections to the proposed changes on the workplace search policy for staff.
Now, would this apply to union and non-union employees in like manner?
Yes, for the police department.
So if the,
Not sure about
if the
Public
contracts
Works.
are quiet on that topic, this governs?
Then it goes to.
We will check one more time to make sure, but I looked through both of them and it did not, it was not addressed, so.
I think that verbiage instead of finance should be village administrator, because ultimately,
That's what I was, do you want it to say human resources?
No.
Or do you want it to say village administrator? I would prefer village administrator.
I agree with that. Jeff needs more stuff on his plate.
It'll be sent immediately over, and then,
Okay. So we'll move forward with the
all right,
staff changes on that one.
2 down.
2 down.
Number 3.
Number 3 is vacation leave. So the current manual has, you can see the sets of years there and how much you would get annually. There is a maximum, carryover maximum of 160 hours currently. The union contracts, the hours are the same, however, in MAP, the years are the same. However, the maximum carryover is 80 hours for MAP. Public Works, the years are the same. However, the carryover is a max of 160 hours, which is what the current manual is for village employees. The new manual has been split into exempt versus non-exempt employees. Exempt or salaried employees. So for non-exempt employees, the number of years has been changed, has been lowered to 14 years, so that anything 15 and over, you would be earning 200 hours per year versus the 18 years and over. This was done we looked at surrounding communities and what surrounding communities have in their manuals, and this is to match up with most of those communities. Exempt employees, as I said, these are salaried employees. Typically, the most recent hires that have been salaried employees have gotten more vacation or received more vacation upon being hired, and so that's why you see the 0 to 4 years at 120 hours versus 80. And then reflective in the second and third set of years there. With the new manual, we are looking at effective January 1st, 2016, at a maximum carryover of 120 hours. What we're looking at there is we're trying to protect the village in terms of the pure number of hours that somebody carries over that they may be able to be paid out for. And then lastly, we have looked at several employees that are over the maximum right now and have stated upon a number of occasions that we would work with those employees to get the hours below the requirement within a reasonable amount of time. So if there's any questions, I can certainly take those at this time.
So this is one of those, Stan, where we did not have full agreement in our discussion, because it does affect, some of the employees that sit in those you and the department head meetings. So the two things, as Justin said, breaking out exempt versus non-exempt employees. The reason, like I said, a lot of times when we hire a non-exempt employee or an exempt employee, you're looking at a department head, something like that, and they already have more vacation time than that, and they usually negotiate for, so we don't have a lot that start out at the 2 weeks. Now, again, tonight the theme seemed to be flexibility. If that's what you're looking for, then you would leave it at the 80 hours and leave it to that new employee coming in to negotiate if they want higher, and if not, then they get the 80. As far as the carryover, we look to reduce that to reduce our liability. If somebody leaves, in good standing, we pay out that vacation time then. The more they're carrying over, the more that is we pay out the end. So by moving it to 120, we feel it's, a little more reasonable. We require you to use at least half of your vacation during the year because we want to see people take time off. Those people who never leave, you start to worry, one, job burnout, and two, that's where a lot of people who are doing things they don't want to be caught doing, they will not take vacation. So we do require vacation. So you shouldn't be carrying over, it's not like you could carry all 200 hours over if you have them. But we have 3 employees now that have a sizable balance over the 160. Because you are allowed to carry over in excess of the 160 if you get approval from the village manager, now village administrator. And we have 3 employees that have received that going back quite a ways. So we've got balances built up, which we feel we need to address. But as Justin said, Megan's worked on a schedule. We're trying to work with them on building it down over time. We're not just going to cut it off, because that's not fair, because they did receive permission to carry that time over previously. So to just take them from them now is not. But we do want to get it down, so we're trying to develop a plan. We can work with them and say, give them some, every 6 months you need to try and be here, 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 to work that down.
Could it be applied to an early retirement as well, do you think? Is that a possibility?
I guess in what manner?
I'm not expressing it in the right fashion, am I?
What he means is if you say you retire January 1st, if you have 120 hours, it becomes,
Yeah, well, in essence, you're just paying it out then.
Yeah.
To have the person not here and you're paying it out. So, yes, that's what we would do now. If somebody retires, we pay it out.
And would there be a certain pension contribution for all those hours? Would that count as hours worked towards their pension?
no.
Well, unless I'm missing something, we either give it to them or we take it away from them, and it doesn't sound like there's any sympathy for taking it away, so we find
We're going to pay them-
palatable ways to give
We're
it
going
to
to pay
them.
them the time out when they leave. It's just, do we want to limit what they can carry over now to 120 hours versus 160, to limit what that payout is? Because when someone retires, we're going to pay out whatever vacation time we have.
We are not taking it away from them, and specifically, like Jeff said, with the 3 employees that are currently over that amount, we have worked out a schedule that we're not taking anything away from them. We're making a suggestion that they use it
Now.
certain number of hours within a certain time period so that they can get it down, again, over a reasonable period of time.
Built up over an extended period, so to expect them to use it in 6 months or, is not reasonable, so.
Because currently, if somebody has the 200 hours, it's basically 5 weeks, right? So you're going to have to hire somebody to do Justin's job, and he's going to be gone for 5 weeks. So now we're paying 2 people for those 5 weeks, essentially. Because if he were to leave.
Oh, if he retires and we pay it out?
Yeah, so now you're paying him those 5 weeks, and you're paying a new person for those same 5 weeks.
That's what we do. Anyway, when someone leaves, we pay out their vacation, and you brought somebody new in. So really, there's not a difference in that. We're still going to pay out whatever vacation time somebody has. We're just trying to limit the amount that they could carry over, so we limit what that payout is.
Correct.
And police is 80. I understand the liability that we could possibly have to pay out, and I think our auditor talked about that 3 or 4 years ago upstairs with this and the accrued sick leave, too. more this, that it essentially can be an investment of an employee to not use your vacation and then take that at a higher rate at a later point. But I'm not really in favor of changing that agreement that we had with those employees that have saved that up over time and have gotten approval for that. I would like to maybe even see that approval of that kind of incentive at least has to be discussed with the board, or at least notified if you're going to extend or give somebody the extra, no, how do I say that right? If you're going to let them roll over more than what the HR manual allows, I'd like the board to at least be notified of that, just so that these type of fringe benefits don't swell over time without the board having knowledge of that.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, they want to just stop it so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But again, you're trying to get the people that are over back down.
Back down.
How is that being received?
Well, feel free to ask. Did you ask?
Yeah.
I believe so.
I mean, is it not, I'm guessing it's not a real positive
It
thing?
is
and-
not being received well.
Okay.
Because two of them are
It de- it
in this
depends
audience
upon-
today.
Actually, it does depend
Yes, it
upon.
depends. You have two of the three that are in the room tonight, so
Okay.
the other one is not here, but they could both give you their opinion on it.
Well, I mean, I can see where it's not a real favorable thing for that.
And
Oh.
if I may,
Certainly.
President, 2 out of the 3 will be here another 10, 15 years. The one, me, I'm in my 29th and a half year, so it affects me in the next 2 to 3 years. So it is important. It is an important decision that you guys make that affects me. And I know there's one other one, or 2 other at Public Works that are in their high 20s for years of service.
You know, would there be some consensus among the board to, can we put this cap in for employees hired after tomorrow? I know that doesn't do anything for our future liability. I just don't like the idea of taking away something that the HR manual currently allows them to have. I know that we're not taking it away because they get to use it over time, but who wants to go on vacation in January? You know, for a few days here and there, it's cold and miserable.
That's when you go somewhere warm.
I know you're going to say that.
Time to go.
I agree
That's a
with
good point,
Matt, that,
Mayor.
you know, it's, once you've given it to somebody and they've had it and they've played by those rules, to change the rules midstream doesn't seem overly fair. But I think moving forward, it has to stop.
With the exception of the 3 employees, basically what we're looking at is by January 1st of 2016, so a year plus, 13 months approximately, it would go to 120 hours. It would still be 160 hours as of January 1st, 2015. And then for January 1st, 2016, it would go to 120 hours. That's with the exception of the 3 employees. The 3 employees, we have looked at a schedule over a period, and I don't have those numbers in front of me tonight, but it is not the same as what's presented right here. There would be a separate discussion for those 3 employees specifically.
Could we, I'm not,
Could you
I'm not hearing a whole
grandfather
lot of
the
support.
3?
Yeah, can we just cap?
Grandfather the 3 in and forget about who's the just hired, just grandfather the 3 and everybody else
Well,
use this.
But anybody who's over tomorrow, it's frozen. You can't accrue any more than that. Or you can't roll over any more than that. And as they use that down over time, then, you know, they can't go any higher again. Till someday they might be at this or they might never. But to change the policy that will only impact 3 employees seems harder to swallow, I think. I'm not hearing any support for that.
Wait, so you're wanting to leave it at 160,
No.
or you wanting to take it to 120?
I don't know. I could go with either
160
one of
with
those.
the exception of 3.
Or
is what
120
Denny
with the
just said.
Yeah, or 120 with the exception of 3, I guess at that point. I mean, if you're looking at this globally and go up 50,000 feet, and you want to say, is 3 weeks vacation okay to roll over every year? Assuming that if you have 3 weeks vacation, you've been here, 5 to 8 years, let's say, and you get another 3 weeks, Is 3 weeks too much, or is 4 weeks too much, or 3 weeks, you know? That's the higher policy, it's not totally policy, but.
Right.
To clarify, we have 3 people that are over the 160. We have people that are over the 120, or we're going to be good?
Now, we have people that are over the 120, but that's why it wouldn't go into effect until just over a year from now, because it's not fair to notify them now and give them until January of 1st of 2015 to get down. So you'd notify them, it's going to go to 120 at the end of next year, so next year they'd have to get that extra 40 out of there.
The people who are over 120 right now, except for the 3 that are over 160, how far over the 120 mark are they?
I mean, it varies.
Some
you
of
got
them
some that
will
are
be
real, yeah.
like 122, some of them are going to be like 152. I mean, it depends.
Well, then it looks like they've got some paid time off coming.
So it sounds like freezing it for people who are above, but 120 or 160? Denny?
I would think the 120 is fine, except for the exception of the 3, and those 3 are kind of grandfathered in, and everybody else is 120. I mean, if you're going to lower it, you do it now, rather than say, okay, now we got a whole bunch that we're going to have at a different level.
Okay. Pete?
120.
Steve?
120 with the exception of the 3.
120.
120.
There's direction. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to bring up on this, and this is going to be another long conversation, under the new manual, exempt employees, 0 to 4 years start with 3 weeks paid vacation, minimum. That's a decent change from where we are now, which is the
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Now, they could always negotiate more, and they probably would.
That's what I said at the beginning, is that, we had it in here because recently we've had people come in at higher, but like I said, the theme of the night seems to have been flexibility, and if that's what you want, then, yeah, you'd leave it at the 80 hours and leave it to that person to negotiate when they come in.
I like that approach.
If they
I
don't,
like that as well.
don't hire them, because they're not thinking.
Oh, you'd be
It's
surprised.
a pretty good tell.
A lot of people don't know to
No,
negotiate that.
they do not.
All right. Everybody
Okay.
in agreement with that? Leave it at 80?
Well, in the years of service, that change is, I mean, we've dropped it from 18 years down to 15 years,
Right.
and then we dropped it from 18 years down to 10. That seems like a pretty big drop. It seems like a radical drop.
Based upon what I'm hearing already, we're leaving the exempt employees out of it, so that one is out of the discussion at this point. Is that correct, Jeff?
It sounds like we would just have the one schedule.
Right.
So the exempt schedule would go away, and you would just have the new manual I, non-exempt employees would be exempt and non-exempt there. So it would be but it would go from 18 to 15 for to get to the 5 weeks.
And that's the only
So that's the
change.
big change, going from 18 to 15. And the bottom part item 2 would come out of there.
Any thoughts about 18 to 15? Hearing none, we'll go with the staff recommendation of 15 then. Okay,
Okay,
item 4.
2 more.
Item 4, hopefully this one can be quick. Personal days, the current manual has 0 days, the union contracts, MAP has 1 day, the Public Works contract, IUOE, has 0 days, and in the new manual, this was based upon a analysis of surrounding communities. We have 2 days in the new manual. So with that, I will turn it over to the board.
No,
I have a question.
sorry.
Who do you want to get beat by first? Me or trustee
No,
Marissette?
no, I was done.
No.
No.
If you're in disagreement, we can just
It,
status quo.
we're going from 18 years down to 15 as far as vacation. And they're getting, if I was in my 14th year, I'm now getting, let me see if my math is correct. I'm getting another 2 weeks of vacation once I hit 15 years, correct?
1 week.
1 week?
Go from 4 to 5.
So I'm getting that 1 week of vacation 3 years quicker.
Yes.
And now we want to add personal days? What's vacation for? What's sick leave for?
I guess I haven't, I looked at this and there's like blue lettering, there's black lettering, there's red lettering. What is this with funerals and all that? Is this into personal leave? Is this part of that?
No,
No,
you would receive funeral leave. Nothing changed with the funeral leave between the two manuals.
but it, okay, I'll come back to that then, because it did change. Something was crossed out or something was added, and it was a different color, so I figured it was, but this is just personal days. In other words, what would be your personal day if you get time off for funerals, which would be a personal day. They even added cousin on here, which I can't see adding a cousin, I'm sorry. That was added on here. It didn't look like it was there in previous years. I got a lot of cousins, 30 cousins. I could turn around and be off every week with somebody saying they're dying. Yes,
The personal day for the MAP contract is, there's no reason, there's no excuse, there's no nothing.
you just take it off.
Just tell us, we do have a time limit, they have to tell us. They could go to the Cubs game, they could do whatever they wanted.
And my cousin could die on the day the Cubs play too. I mean, that doesn't make a, I mean, you got so many, and to me, you got so many days off as it is. I don't know what you'd use a personal day for, except like you say, to go to a Cubs game or something. And in that case, you take a vacation day.
Is there anyone in,
Hand raised?
No.
Sox game, I'm sorry. Pete just come at.
is there anybody in support of
one more
this,
time?
the staff recommendation of 2? Or would you guys like to keep the status quo of 0?
Status quo.
Okay. Moving on to item
All
5.
right, one more.
The last being sick leave. The current manual has 3.69 hours biweekly with an unlimited maximum. The union contracts, the police patrol MAP contract has 3.69 hours biweekly, but with a 640-hour maximum. The IUOE Public Works contract, same as 3.69 hours with an unlimited max. The new manual, what we're looking for is a 3.69 hours, which is the same across all 4 of these, but with a 960-hour maximum. And although it is not listed on here, we would work with the employees over that maximum number of hours, and would not be taking that time away from those employees.
Go ahead. Are you just going to shout no, or you got a question?
I want to make sure I'm clear. So somebody can carry over 200 hours of vacation time plus an additional 960? So now that person could have 1,160 hours?
Right now, you can have more than that, because it's unlimited how much sick time you can carry over right now.
So yes.
Does-
We have people that are well in excess of the 960.
This is one of those situations where the people retire a year early type of things?
Well, you couldn't use your sick time for that. Some places you can use some of your sick time to, buy IMRF time.
Does sick
for
time
that.
get paid out?
No.
I didn't think so,
We
okay.
we pay, for non-union, we pay 320 hours of sick time out currently.
So we do pay.
We pay 320 hours, but if you have 1,000 hours, you're getting 320.
What about union?
Union does not have payout. We negotiated that away.
Is the Family Medical Leave Act a factor here?
I mean, the time we have goes beyond the
Beyond
family
those?
medical leave time.
And then, in some places, there's short-term sick leave and there's extended or long-term sick leave. Maybe if you're in recovery from cancer or some other condition that takes a long time. I don't see that distinction here.
No, it's really, there's 960 hours out there, which is just about 6 months.
So even if it's not, just help me think it through out loud for a moment. If it's not paid, but if they're not on duty, presumably we have to pay someone else to cover those duties. And they still can come back to their job when they feel that they're no longer in need of sick leave. And that person that's been doing their job is reassigned or let go.
Well, I mean, right now, we just cover it internally. If someone's out, someone else is picking up those duties in the meantime, and the person who's out is getting paid their sick time. And that's the concern here, is if you have unlimited sick time, you know, Chief pulls a hamstring running to first base there because he's still playing softball. I really don't want him out for, 9 months, 10 months, 11 months. At some point, it becomes an issue not having that employee there. Now, work-related injuries, be a little different there, but
Well, maybe, since he's nearby here and you've been used as an example,
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like at trial. You brought me into it, so I get to comment. Again, it's similar to vacation. I have over 2,000 hours of sick time. I don't use my sick time. I haven't been sick in 15 years, so knock on wood. But I saved it for that example, what Administrator Zoffel just mentioned. I've had discussions with staff. It's another same, to answer all your questions, is there's differences of opinion on this. I've been here 29 and a half years again, and I've saved that sick time for some day when it goes bad. To cap that on me right now, I don't think it's fair. So that's my opinion.
And with this one, if we go with the 960 and cap it there, anybody over would not lose the time. I mean, so if he's got 2,000 hours, he would stay there. He would not accrue more until at some point he ever dropped below the 960, then he would. But otherwise, anybody who was over the 960 would just be frozen at whatever level they're at until they drop down below, and then they would earn time again.
So I just want to be clear, at 2,000 hours, that's 50 weeks. It's almost a full year.
well, I can think, unless I'm off base here, I can think of some examples where employees are in a recovery for that period of time, and that could apply to both our public works and our public safety employees. Those are potentially dangerous jobs. So
But that wouldn't fall underneath this.
is that the part I'm
Because this
missing?
isn't sick time, that would be workman's comp.
Well, if it's on duty, it's different, but
You did mention FMLA as an example.
Yes.
What FMLA is it protects your job for 12 weeks in any rolling 12-month period. So if you're off on FMLA leave for 12 weeks, we cannot, by law, and correct me if I'm wrong, we cannot give your job to somebody else. At the end of that time, and that's why FMLA is there, at the end of that time, that at 13 weeks, we could potentially give that position to someone else. That's why FMLA is there, to protect the employee for that 12 weeks. Now, whether we actually do that or not, that's a different discussion. That's the judgment. We've been talking
Dad,
about
you
all
better
night.
keep your 2,013 weeks and you're gone. It
Well,
just, to me, it doesn't sound right, but
and all seriousness aside, you're right. All kidding aside, you're right, I'm sorry.
In my case, here, I'm diagnosed with cancer in February. I go through surgeries, I go through 4 rounds of chemotherapy, and I'm done with my chemotherapy in June. So February, March, April, May, June, there's 4 months. And I had, if you can have a little bout with cancer, I had an easy cancer. And, you know, mine was 4 months of hell. And actually, it was 6 months of hell. But to give someone's job away after 12 weeks, I think is very short-minded. I think is very narrow-minded.
And we're not saying that's what would happen here, we're just explaining what the law is for FMLA.
The
I mean, the sick leave cap goes beyond that 960 hours.
The 960 hours maximum is 6 months. And, I mean, there are illnesses and stuff that are a lot worse than what I went through that are going to require a lot longer period of time. Here, we have copies of the rules that the current employees have been playing by, and now we're looking at changing those rules. And I don't think, that as far as the sick leave, at least from my personal experience, 960 hours is nothing.
How many,
I
yeah.
reacted to that.
But you weren't off for the whole time, not to argue with you on
You didn't use 6
that.
months of sick time.
But you could have.
Good.
Had
I
you
was
had
in
that.
chemotherapy, whatever I was going, you know, yeah, my employer, thank God, was outstanding during the whole thing. And I was very lucky, but I don't think that the output that I was providing to my employer was as good as it is when I don't have cancer.
True. But if you look at this and don't think about, shouldn't even say that, it might end up in the paper. If you look at this and don't consider the employees that might be above this and the impact you have on them, because staff already said that we're not going to change that for employees that are above that. And look at it from the village's perspective, that if we have an employee that is out, I'm assuming with the doctor's note, for 6 months, that job is going to need to be replaced. I mean, somebody's going to need to do that work. And are we going to be paying 2 people out after 6 months being out of work? Should we still pay 2 people to do that job or 1? Like, we have to, if it's we're thinking of it as if it's, Justin or somebody at Village Hall, where it might be a little bit easier to cover services in some areas, let's say. But if you're Public Works in the middle of winter, where we don't have the additional staff member, where that role has to be filled, what's the village's position overall on this? I mean, we're not going to affect anybody that's here. I think that it's in our best interest to have some level of a maximum. That's our exposure going forward. Not to say that their job won't be here. FMLA, you're not required to pay them either, are you?
No.
For the 12 weeks? This is requiring us to pay people for certain time off. And while, I mean, the 960 is fine, I'm okay with that, because I think we need to worry about, I guess, our financial stability. If somebody's out for a year or 2 years, what if they never come back?
And forgive me if I miss it, do we have short-term and long-term disability insurance?
Shouting up over there.
Yes, we do have optional short-term and long-term. Optional short-term disability insurance. The long-term disability is either through the police pension fund or through IMRF.
Okay.
But not for the other employees?
Excuse
But
me.
not for the other employees?
Well, IMRF would be for everyone.
Oh, IMF, okay, you're right.
Police are through police pension.
I noticed here
everything
too
else.
that the police only has 640 right now, and they'd have to have a real dumb lawyer that next contract would bump it up to 960 like everybody else.
Can I add one thought? Sure. That's okay, thank you. In regards to the chief, I think it's a valid point to say, not old school, I don't want to say old school, but that's probably the best term to say, that people wouldn't take time off and work hard and earn that time. So my experience and with people and they're working, nowadays, the generations, they want their time off. So sick time is used now, and you can see what it can be used for, you know,
Ball games.
family, cousins. I mean, it's pretty expansive back in where it wasn't before. So I'm glad that moving forward, it will be whoever has earned it aren't going to lose it. But if the work ethic were the same as it was back then, I would say, well, then you're incentivizing people to take sick time, because they will when they know it doesn't benefit them to not call in sick. But like for our officers, that hasn't been an issue because they value their time, and sick time has been expanded, so that really isn't an issue. But ultimately, I think for people that have earned it like that, I'm glad that you're at least acknowledging that, accepting that, if that makes any sense.
When we did the sick time study during the union contract for patrol, nobody was near the 640. So when we talk about 960 cap, it affects a lot of employees because at the police department, for example, there's two of us with over 25 years, and there's the rest with less than 14 and less. So you don't have anybody between the 14 and 25-year job experience. So to cap that, I don't have a problem with the cap. The problem I have is, again, similar to vacation, what are we going to do with the people who have been here 25-plus years?
Well, if I'm understanding what you said earlier correctly, it doesn't matter if you have 6,000 hours. At the end of your career, the village is only paying 320.
Correct.
That's all you're going to get paid for.
Yes.
So,
And if you currently have 6,000 hours, if you go to the 960, you'll still have 6,000 hours. You just won't go beyond 6,000 hours.
correct, you won't continue to accrue.
Right.
And only certain employees get paid 320, not everybody.
Not the union.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like consensus. It doesn't.
You've got 7 different opinions.
Yeah, yeah, and Teresa's not even here. Danny, what do you think?
I don't have any problem with the 960, that's 6 months.
Okay.
Like I say, the police probably will bump it up in their union contracts if they're
Well,
smart.
didn't we negotiate hard to get that down to 640? And the only reason Public Works is unlimited currently is because it hasn't come up yet?
No, there was no negotiating at the patrol contract that time.
We just put.
They doubled it,
They put 640 in and,
correct? But they don't get paid out. They don't get paid out. And to be honest with you, there probably is nobody's even halfway there. Because they earn and burn, like what Deputy Chief Sanders said.
Pete, what do you think?
I'm debating on this 960 hours. I kind of agree with Steve said, why couldn't you move that up a little bit more?
To a higher number?
Make it anything. I mean,
How
6
about,
months seemed like a reasonable amount of time.
Even move it up to 975?
Okay. You got one for 960 and one for 975. I think it's the same
principal.
principle there. Right now, we have no cap, so a cap, a reason, 6 months-ish cap. Steve?
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Could we let the record reflect?
Yeah, trustee Youngerman is speechless.
No, you just said you didn't have the answer.
Trustee Youngerman's ignorant.
He closed the door a long time ago.
Yeah, I know he did.
Doug, what do you think? Let's move this along.
6:40.
Thank you.
Now watch, that'll come out during reelection.
I still have to ask a question before, let's say I'm in Public Works, I fall off a ladder, I break my back, and it's going to take a year to recover. 960 doesn't catch that. Does something else, what do we tell that person?
Well, that's
Covered under
workman's
the workers'
comp.
comp.
But
Different.
does that
Say
mean
he's playing
lost?
softball, Stan, I'm gonna change it. Say he's playing softball,
Well-
and that's the case. And he hurts his back. Now it's not workman's comp.
So what are we really saying? After 960, your job may not be here anymore, or I'm a little confused about what happens at the end of 960.
Well, after 12 weeks, we could hire somebody, even though we're still paying you.
Right, he's asking if they go through their 960 hours of sick time, then what happens? So, and,
The village stops paying you.
yeah, because I don't know that there's a set answer to that. I mean,
I feel like if I were
Run
hurt, I understand the softball, but let's come back to, let's say I'm hurt on the job. I could be in a police officer incident that caused an injury, or I could be in a public works incident that caused an injury. I'm not comfortable telling that person, if you don't heal in 6 months, you're done for.
No, this has nothing to do with that, though, if I'm not
Workman's
mistaken.
comp is like
Because that would be
Adam.
workman's comp, and that's a whole different animal. This is sick pay.
Let
This
me-
is you get hurt playing softball, you're out of work for 6 months, the village is paying you for 6 months. After 6 months, the village stops paying you. Because how long do we pay you for, because you broke your knee playing softball on Sunday?
Well, and my point is, if I have the time, I've earned the time, the 2,000, and let me burn it then. So, yeah, you're paying me, but I've also earned it, and I,
that's why
In
we're,
your case,
that's why we're
correct.
trying to limit it going
Here's
forward.
Going
the
forward.
thing. Okay, whether you hurt yourself playing softball, you have cancer, whatever. If I'm unable to perform my duties legally after 12 weeks of sick time, 12 weeks, you could find someone else. I may have
Legally.
960 hours of sick time, but by law, after 12 weeks, the village can hire someone else. Now, does that mean that after that 12-week period, I'm no longer an employee of the village? According to our manual, I still have another 3 months of sick time. Now, when do I give up my right as an employee to not be able to return to my job?
I mean, legally, when your 12 weeks runs out. Now, I don't know that would happen. That hasn't been our practice in the past, but legally.
It's how long, the question is, how long does the village have to pay you? How long are you on the payroll for when you're not coming to work and not performing your duties?
and the injury is off-duty.
Correct,
So
and the injury is
not-
off-duty. It's got nothing to do with workman's comp.
Gotcha.
If you fall off the ladder at Public Works or,
Yeah. So it's 12 weeks, and then, like Administrator Zofa said, in the past, and I could name several, we haven't done that to anybody.
no, and I don't think that it would be this board's direction to want to do that. And it's not about that. It's about how long are we going to pay you for to not be at work? You know, that's, I mean, and again, in Chief Myers' case, 2,000 hours. We're going to be paying him for a year almost to not be at work. But we're going to have to hire somebody to do the job. Somebody has to take over, and somebody has to run the show.
But
How long do we continue to pay?
Well, and the difference is, and I agree with the 960 cap, so don't get me wrong, because you have to cap it somewhere. So that employee gets hurt off duty 12 weeks, and if you don't keep your sick time, because we encourage people at the PD to keep their sick time, and it's not working. And you can see if you would go check the balances, they're way down. And I'm like, and that's what Armando meant by call it what you want, old school or not. I'm saving my time for a rainy day. Knock on wood, I don't get hurt, but I agree. After 960, how long do you? And that's the discussion that has to happen here.
Yeah, if you're 960, it's 6 months, and now you heard from a softball, and now you got basketball season coming, say, I think I'm gonna take another 200 hours, they're paying me. In a current position, it's unlimited, the guy can say, I'm gonna wait another 200 hours, get my knee better in shape for basketball, and we're still paying them. Where this way you have a cap on it, you gotta have a cap. If workman's comp's entirely different. Adam's been out for a couple of years, you know. Yeah, and that's entirely different, you know the situation there.
One question, the,
He was hurt on the job, too.
Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to take 6 months off for being sick, you would need some form of proof that you actually are sick. It's not that you're just deciding to do this. You would need doctor's note, some actual reason. So it's a little bit, I mean, it's not as complex, but it's more complex than that. How long do we pay somebody beyond that? I mean, it sounds like there's definitely 4 of us that are in favor of capping it at various amounts.
I'll do the 960. My question is, what do we do with the people who are above the 960 now, as far as if something should happen? Okay, our example, the chief, he's got, we'll say, 2,000 hours accrued of sick time. He no longer accrues any more sick time. Is that correct?
Correct. He would be frozen at the 2,000 or whatever it is he has.
The chief plays softball, and he's not as quick as he used to be. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, the risk is,
Risk levels going up. And, you know, we're talking about a situation where somebody to get sick and need to use 2,000 hours of their sick leave. When's the last time that happened? This is like, I mean, that's a serious incident that happens. So this doesn't, I don't think somebody using 960 is going to happen every year, I could be wrong, but.
Hasn't been past practice, no. It's not a normal thing.
So I'm going to say that you have,
I'll flip, Matt, and I'll go 960.
there you go, thank you.
That make you
That
feel
was-
good?
I'll
I
go,
had so
I'll go
many numbers here.
960, but I want to know, from a board perspective, what are we going to do with the people who are above that?
Well, we've stated
They're
it 3 times,
grandfathered.
and you just stated it once, nothing. Nothing's going to happen to them, they're capped at where they are.
Well, that's effective. That, it just, okay. I mean,
It's the
Okay.
same thing we just did with the vacation pay. You were like, you don't want to take it away from them, they've earned it, it was there on the books, it was theirs to earn, they've got it, they get to keep it. But again, the drawback, though, sorry, chief, is you don't get to accrue anymore.
vacation and sick time are different things. Vacation is you're going someplace, you're having fun. If you're out sick for X number of however long, there's obviously some major problem. I mean, sick time is not fun.
So would you suggest that those that are over the 960 get to continue to accrue?
No.
I'm not sure where you're going.
I don't know.
Already. We already decided.
Yeah.
when you say over 960, I bet you maybe 2 employees you're talking about.
Yeah. So make sure to tell them, both of them, that we spent a great deal of time talking about this tonight.
Are they in this room?
One of them is.
I'm not sure we have, I'm not sure
that
we have
other one
another one,
missed-
but we might.
Okay. I think we have direction on all of those then, and I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have one
Have we
quick
beat this
question
dead
again.
horse enough?
Yeah, Denny's got
What about, in this manual, what about cousins? And there's another thing in there about 8 hours to take your kids to school for meetings or something. Is that always been in there, or is that something new also? Cousins, I know are new because it was added on here. And I can't see all these additions. Here we're taking stuff, trying to make it calm, and now all of a sudden, I can have 20 cousins and take 20 days off, and at the same time, I can take my kids to school. And yet, that's what was kind of stupid. If you take that out, you might need a personal day somewhere. But you don't already need a personal day when you have, take your kid to school for 8 hours. I mean, you'd have to be Ohio or something like that, I would think, to take a day off. Has that always been in there, or is this new?
The school visitation leave has always been in there. That is not new.
The vacation for the kid?
The school visitation leave, it's.
Always been in there?
Section 6-19, that has always been in there.
That's if you have to go for parent-teacher conferences or some sort of meeting at the school.
That's liberal, that's nice. But what about the cousin deal on the desk? Because that I know is added, because I can see it, it was added in there, and for me, I can see grandma dying or something like that, but cousins, you can go back to, this is my step-cousin of the 4th generation, and
What, do
I
you
can't
have
see
it?
that.
Do you have that, Justin? What the bereavement policy is?
Yes, it's 6-11. You are correct, it was added. That was based on a review of several different manuals that contained cousin. We can take that out if you want to. That's, I mean.
I can't see, but how much other stuff is like that? I just happen to pick up cousin. How much other stuff is added in this manual that, where you added a word and didn't say anything? Is there anything else?
Well,
Because there was 3 different color inks, I noticed the cousin was added, and that to me was like, we'll stick this in and nobody will see it, and to me, that's just not close for having a day off.
yeah, I mean, we could probably spend a while talking about cousins and that. The memo that you had today was the major policy changes in this. That's what I asked Justin to prepare for this. So there may be other words in there that were changed, and before we approve this, if you guys want to take a look at that, you can. But I felt that it was important for us to cover the major policy changes at the board level, and let staff handle updating it based on laws and codes and that, so.
Well, but, I mean, I agree with Denny, though. Adding cousins, that's a significant exposure financially to the village, because I don't know any place that gives bereavement time for cousin. I don't know of any place that does that, you know?
And that's fine. I don't think anybody would be opposed to that. If
I've
you,
taken it out.
Thank you.
It's just that I thought this was the last discussion, major discussion on it, and after this, it was going to be like a rubber stamp the next time it was brought up, and I thought, I'd rather get my 2 cents worth in on that one.
No, I appreciate it.
Rather than saying, okay, next time it's a rubber stamp, it sucks good, and all of a sudden, somebody's cousin gets sick, and we say, when was that put in? Because like Armando said, his guys in sick leave, they use them for anything. And that could be used for a cousin death if somebody wants to use a sick day, but
okay. And please review the full manual if you want before the next board meeting. Are you planning on bringing this forward at a future meeting? There you go. I would put it on for items for separate action, so that way if we want to take action, we can. And then I was going to do a drum roll for this when we move on, because I know this is why everybody came tonight. I've been excited about it all day.
Right.
So, and I know that it is almost 9 o'clock, but I don't want to, honestly, I'm excited about it, so I want to keep going. So that'll ask Engineer Wallers for
That's fine.
the keynote speaker tonight.
I'll stick that in our box.
Thank you.
I think you can only look good by comparison.
Don't run, Laura. Don't run.
Doug and I have decided we're cousins 37 times removed, so.
That explains a lot.
So if somebody wants to kill him, I can take the day off. Are we taking a break? This, no.
It won't go any more than half an hour.
Could you call Rosati's and order a pizza?
Sure.
Jeff, I have my speed dial.
Okay.
get back to it. All right, so there's been some developments in water planning recently, and I thought it would be a good time to just come back and revisit some things that we've talked about. I think the last time we spoke about some of this stuff was 2011, and probably just a good time to recap some of the things that are going on. If you can go to the next one, Jeff, please. So what I want to do is give a quick, thank you.
You can do it yourself.
Yeah. A quick recap on some state and regional water planning that's been going on. There was a recent groundwater study done for Kendall County that has some ramifications for Montgomery, and I thought it'd be good to take a look at that. And then some planning considerations that I'd like you to think about, and then, you know, what our next steps might be. Okay. Usually that's what my audiences look like, but I think you guys, you prep me, I think, better, so we'll just keep going. Usually there's one person awake at the end. We'll see if that works out tonight. I don't know. Usually you can count on Matt, so we'll see. So water planning kind of was revigorated in 2008 when we did the, when we had the executive order from the governor to do statewide, a statewide water plan, but one of the first two was for the area around Chicago. And I was a delegate to that committee along with Mayor Wisner, representing Metro West, and we spent 3 years developing the plan, which was Water 2050. And there was a lot of good things that came out of it. It ultimately led to the formation of NWPA, and I'll get to that in a minute. The other thing that's going on is that there were, the original two studies were the Northeastern Illinois study that I participated in, then there was a Mohammed Aquifer study in Central Illinois, and they're currently doing the Kaskaskia Basin. But they have divided the state up into 9 different regions, and their plan is, the state plan is to do a water study for each one of those 9 districts. So right now they're starting to work on the Rock River or the northeast region and some of the other locations. So that's something that's on the horizon. I mention it in, just for your information, it'll come into play, I think in the future. There are some, there's efforts statewide to do expansion of that planning. The Water 2050 study was basically 11 counties, and it included the normal NIPSI or, you know, CMAP counties, but it also reached down and got Kankakee, Grundy, Boone County, and DeKalb. As you might appreciate, when we looked at drinking water supply for that region, the majority of it was supplied by Lake Michigan water, almost a billion gallons a day. The other groundwater was 250 million, and then river water 212. So the emphasis, a lot of the emphasis was on Lake Michigan users, Lake Michigan water. But we did get into one area that has been a topic of discussion ever since, which was what's been referred to as the mining of the deep aquifers. And we rely in Montgomery on the deep aquifers extensively for our water supply, not unlike Oswego, not unlike Yorkville, not unlike North Aurora, not unlike Sugar Grove. A lot of communities in our area use it. It's been estimated that there's a kind of a sustainable yield of about 80 million gallons a day. That number's been challenged from time to time, and the State Water Survey is now working with the Northwest Water Planning Alliance to try to get a better handle on what really sustainable yield means and what it is. And I'll come back to that a little bit later, but there's a couple things I want to just draw your attention to on this drawing. The first is the overuse of the deep aquifer has happened before, and when it peaked in 1979, the solution was the formation of an expanded Lake Michigan water to the suburbs. So DuPage Water Commission, some of the other JAWAs were formed, and water was brought out to the suburbs to relieve the pressure on the deep aquifer. When that happened, we had a significant drop-off in use, and we dipped below the sustainable yield, if you will. But as we saw growth in the western suburbs, we started to pull back, and we're starting to cross that line. What becomes interesting is the studies that was done in 2050, and was that we looked at a high, water use future and a low resource intensive use. And what became apparent is that if we're going to optimize the use of the deep aquifer, going to some of the low water use is probably in our best interest, because it's a valuable resource. We could quickly get to back to the 1979 level, and there was issues that were caused by that, and I think at all costs we wanted to avoid it. So that was one of the early indicators that, you know, there was some work to be done in the western suburbs, and we needed to talk more about it. That's really what led to the formation of the Northwest Water Planning Alliance, which is kind of focused on groundwater and surface water communities in the 5 counties that are listed. It's actually DeKalb, Kane, Kendall, McHenry, and then a portion of Lake County that's not served by Lake Michigan water. It's 80 communities, about 1.3 million people, and that's what constitutes our Northwest Water Planning Alliance, and our focus is on groundwater and surface water, the Fox River primarily. So just some quick facts about that. What I like about the Northwest Water Planning Alliance is it brings together the people that actually produce and use water and have to make decisions related to water. So it has 14 elected public officials that are the executive committee, 9 of which are mayors, 5 are county board chairs, and then we have a technical advisory committee that gives them some help on policy issues. But it's driven by elected officials, and I think that's a good thing. And that was one of the tenets that Mayor Wisner was interested in bringing forward, because the communities are the ones that have to affect rate increases, have to pay for all these things, so they should be involved in the planning of it. It's a bottom-up approach, and it's a voluntary program. One of the things that we talk about a lot in presentations that we make is the significance of water conservation, and why do we even care about it? Why shouldn't we just use as much water as we want? You know, I'm paying for it. I'd like to use as much as I want. Well, the reason to do it is that we've got a scarcity issue with the deep aquifer, and that is that we are mining it out, and if we don't do some things to sustain it, we're going to have to develop alternate supplies, which we're probably going to need to do anyway, but we'll have to do it faster. And the cost of a gallon of water is going to go up when we start looking at alternate supplies. So one of the things that we can do is we can take a look at our, and I'll just try to explain this as best I can, but so right now, our waterworks system has a certain capacity, and that's the straight line. And as our water use goes per year, we add people, we have a certain consumption rate. There's a point in time in the future where we intersect that point. When we do, we have to make an improvement. We have to add a well, we have to add a water tower, we have to do something to be able to serve that future population. So when that intersection point happens, we come up here, we have to make an investment. If we're able to do some water conservation, meaning that we add population but we lower our per capita consumption, what happens is you push out your capacity in time, and so you've now delayed the improvements, plus you don't have to build as big of an improvement because the future water use is less. So now you're saving a significant amount of capital cost. That's been a theoretical discussion for a long time. We've been doing several master plans for different communities, and what we've done is we offer a discussion where they go to a future that has some water conservation component and what happens. So I've just put up 2 examples. We've completed one for Algonquin and one from Elgin. And by doing over the 20-year planning period, if they could reduce their water use by 15%, Algonquin saved almost $6.5 million, and Elgin almost $16 million. So that's a significant amount of money. That may mean that there's a well that doesn't have to be drilled, or maybe the pipeline that's going out to serve an area out west or out into a growth area can be smaller. So there's real benefit to looking at conservation and seeing how it applies to the community. So the point here is I think there's a place for conservation in the planning area of our water supply, and something I want to talk about as we move forward. To give you some background on the Kendall County study, it's one of a group of water studies that's been done for our area. It started with the Kane County groundwater study, then we have McHenry County groundwater study, now Kendall County. They're all based on a computer model, a regional computer model that was developed by the State Water Survey, and it's been refined on with every study, so it gets better each time. It's a very complicated model, as you can see from just the sort of fast facts. It has a lot of different moving parts to it. The Sandwich Fault is a geological anomaly in Kendall County that affects how water gets recharged, things like that. So they've added different things as they've gone through each one of these studies. It's an important tool for us because it allows us to look at the future and what's going to happen in the future. Now, just like any model, it has its limitations and you have to recognize those, but it is a good tool for us to be able to do some predictive modeling into the future. Some of the refinements they've made as they've learned, it used to be thought that there was no interrelationship between the sandstone layers and the different geological areas. So they thought that there was what was called aquicludes, meaning that there was just no transfer down from some of the upper formations in the Chicagoland area because of the existence of Maquoketa Shale and other things. The reality is they believe in some of the bedrock valleys there is transfer of water, and they've now started to calibrate that into the model. So why is that significant? Well, it just makes a better model so that when they run future population and future water withdrawals, we get a better and more accurate picture of what's really going on. And the state does try to do some well logs from time to time, but the deep aquifer is difficult to use for modeling because there's not a lot of dedicated observation wells. They have to use production wells. To familiarize you all with a couple of important terms, you'll see if you read any of these reports, often we refer to this Ansel unit. It's one of the sandstone areas, aquifers that we use here. It's also been referred to as the St. Peter Sandstone. Below that is a formation called the Ironton-Galesville unit. That's really our primary water-bearing formation that we draw from in the village. We have about, I think, like 83% of our water comes from the deep aquifer, about 17% from our shallow aquifer. But the important thing to just mention here is, you know, the Ansel unit's down about 700 feet. You get down to about 1,000, 1,200 feet for the Ironton-Galesville. And then there are other formations below that. But our primary area of concern is the Ironton-Galesville and the Ansel, because that's where most of our water comes from. This is a model showing both existing data and modeled data for our well number 3, which is on the east side of the river. It's a deep well. It's one of our older wells. The older wells, and this one included, are open to numerous formations. So they're open to both the Ansel formation, the St. Peter, and the Ironton-Galesville. The new wells that we drill, we don't leave them open to the Ansel anymore. We drill through it, case it, and then we just target the water-bearing formation that we're interested in, which is the Ironton-Galesville. And the reason we do that is we want to control our water quality. So wells 14 and 15, when those were drilled, we drilled them down into the Ironton-Galesville only, so that we could protect our water quality, and you'll understand why as we move forward. But the interesting thing about the series of simulations here is, if you look here, it was down, it rebounded. This is where when we went off, the suburbs went off deep aquifer. But as we go forward now, we see that we're starting to dip down and, you know, de-water this Ansel formation. Business as usual gets us down there after 2040, but if you look at the less resource intensive level, you can see how that resource now gets extended quite a bit, and we don't dip into the Ansel formation as quickly. You can see also that we're out quite a bit here in terms of time. You know, we're at 2014. Looks like, you know, it's after 2040 that we actually de-water that Ansel formation. We're not in an emergency mode now, but I do think it's an important time to start planning. A lot of communities are starting to think about what is the next step. And the sooner that we identify and develop alternate resources, the better off our deep aquifer is going to be, and it's going to be there as kind of a savings account for us when we need it. It's a drought-tolerant resource, and if you de-water it, it's not there when you need it. So there's some reason, in my opinion, to start getting on board with some planning now, because any major change, like if you went to Fox River water or Lake Michigan water, is not going to happen in 1 year. It's going to be measured probably in 10-year cycles. So I think the timing is right for us to now start to look at alternatives, protect the valuable resources we have, and look at a sustainable future. Just to emphasize that this has been a discussion that we've had for a long time. This was one of the first exhibits that was brought forward when we did the 2008, or in 2008 when we started Water 2050. It just shows the same thing, that over time, and this is an extended pumping, just using the 2002 rates, if you just keep pumping at that level, you will de-water that Ansel unit. Now the good news is we're drawing from below the Ansel unit, but there are impacts for a partial or a full desaturation of that Ansel unit. And the two critical ones are loss in transmissivity, which means you get less water out of the formation, which is critical because we're in there to get water. But those redox changes are the other thing. So as you dewater the formation, you add oxygen, you let air into the formation, and it allows chemical reaction to take place with things that are in the sandstones. And then as the water levels may rise from time to time, you may start to now pull those new compounds into your water supply, and you have to deal with them. So you might have to treat them. And there's not a lot known about those, but there's been suspicion that other things can be formed that could be a problem. Arsenic is one of the things that's raised from time to time. We've not seen that in our area, but it's something that we certainly monitor for and are concerned about. But I think for us, the main concern is the transmissivity loss and the fact that we might have lesser water coming out of our formation. So that's why you're concerned about it. But as it continues to move down, that Ansel dewaters, then the next step is Ironton-Galesville, and then it's really an issue for us. And even as this goes down, our pumping costs go up, and our well pump settings probably have to go down. So there's ramifications for water level declines regardless of whether we dewater that or just lower it. So it's something to be concerned with, not an emergency, but something to be concerned with. So what do we think needs to happen? It's been quite a while since we've done a system-wide update. I think it's probably time to start thinking about that for maybe FY16. We'd like to assess our system capacity and demand. What's our realistic population projections going forward? Most of the studies that were done were based on the high growth periods that we had and really need another look. We did do some adjustments in 2009 when we drilled well 15, or when we did the project plan for well 15, but it's probably a wise thing to take another look at. The second thing is we've established a really good rapport with the State Water Survey, and we'd be able to do some discrete modeling here to see how exactly our wells would perform over time, and we can see what our real time horizon is to start making some moves. I don't want to wait too long because there's some other opportunities, I think, to do some collaborative planning right now that I think we may want to take advantage of. We certainly want to evaluate our existing supplies, which would be, part of that ISWS modeling effort. And then any report we do these days, we feel it's an important thing to look at the impact of conservation because it can have a pretty significant dollar impact to the community without a lot of pain. So when you think about it, and we're doing some of this already, but just whenever you buy a new appliance, if you buy a new washing machine, odds are it's going to be a lot more efficient than the one you replaced. So by not changing anything you do, you can still do 10 loads a day, you're going to save water. That's the good news. Some things don't require any kind of change in behavior. It's just we're going to have the advantage of better, more efficient appliances as we move forward. There are things like lawn watering that do require some education and cooperation to get less use of water. The village has adopted the model ordinance that NWPA put forward. The advantage to that is it limits watering to even odd days between the hours of 6 to 9 and 6 to 9. May seem like a little thing, but it balances, significantly balances your peak water use, because only half the people are watering at any given time. The other thing that I think Steve probably knows better than most, our irrigation systems are really inefficient, and 50% of the water used typically is wasted. So it's really kind of a squandering of resources, and it just takes a little bit of education and, you know, to let people know that overwatering is not doing the grass any good. So, but my point is, by not making any real significant changes, you can impact a significant amount of capital expenditure in the future. So I think it's something that we'd like to evaluate, and I think that helps drive the point home as you go forward. Because there are some other issues that have to be dealt with. As you conserve water from the residential side, your revenue drops. And you have to be cognizant of that, and then you have to decide, are you going to adjust rates up so the person may be still paying the same amount but using less water, and you have that argument. But I think if you have, can also see the change in possible savings of capital costs, it's worth looking at. So, and then the other thing, and maybe the most important thing, would be to explore the alternative sources and supplies of water. And what we'd like to do is plot the short-term course and the long-term course. So you have, you know, what are we going to do in the next 5 years, and then what are we doing out into the 20-year? You know, we usually do 0 to 5, 6 to 12, and then 12 to 20 to kind of give the community a little bit of a roadmap going forward. Nobody has a crystal ball on population, but you just have to try to do your best in establishing those criteria and guidelines. So last thing that I'll just leave with is there's never a one-size-fits-all solution. So what works one place may not work, you know, here. And I would say when we go into this study, we would want to look at everything. I'd put everything on the table. So whether it's water conservation, shallow groundwater, Fox River, Lake Michigan, collaboration with our neighbors, whatever ideas are brought forward, you'd want to look at and consider. The village has a lot of options relative to their alternate supplies, but we just have to go through them methodically and decide which ones are going to be best for us and what's going to be the best you know, arrangement for the village going forward. So our plan is to bring forward for discussion during the budget process a request for funding for a future water study to try to address some of these issues, including the collaboration with some of our nearby communities that have expressed interest in looking at the Fox River. And I would encourage you to always look at alternatives and then make a decision for yourselves what you think is best. So that's it for this evening. Be happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
Why do you look like that? Pardon my ignorance, because I'm not a water guy. This removal of the dams and things, does any of that river dammed water seep down to the deep aquifer level? Is that an issue going forward with the dam debate?
No, from a water supply standpoint, in terms of recharge of the aquifers, it's not a change, because we don't, by removing the dams temporarily, you're going to let the pool above the dam go out, but over time, it's the same amount of water passing through. So there's really no decline in recharge relative to that. So I wouldn't expect it would be an issue there. It probably over time, they've spent 12 years working on a implementation study for the Fox River, and I think they're about a year out of finalizing it. But generally, the water quality of the river would improve by removal of the dams. Now, there are exceptions, and there's different areas where it's more critical or not. So from a water supply standpoint, recharge standpoint, not an issue. It may have a slight benefit in terms of where you take the water out. But right now, communities are working around where you wouldn't take, like if we were going to do a Fox River water supply, we wouldn't take it above the dam, we'd take it out below, because the water quality would be much better below.
Thank you.
Are there educational efforts we could undertake now that would help us get a head start on this? I think the public would be receptive.
The NWPA has a website, it's nwp.us, and we have a lot of educational materials on that. We have flyers that can be incorporated into the village newsletter. There's flyers on, you know, watering lawns, fix a leak, just other things like that. So those resources are available. So we can help direct the village to those resources and maybe plan a campaign, if you will, in the newsletter if that's appropriate.
I agree with trustee Bond. I think that the alternating water days, people just see it as an inconvenience. They're not understanding the long-term effect 40 years from now of doing something like that. And it, again, something as simple as a little blurb in a news article or in a newsletter might help at least open people's eyes to it.
Yeah, it's significant. I mean, if just to think of it in simple terms, like if you have 100 people using 5 gallons a minute, that's 500 gallons a minute of water. And if you double that, you know, that's 1,000. That's the output of typically one of our deep wells. So, I mean, that's over 1.5 million gallons a day. It's a lot of water. So if you can have, you know, spread that over 2 days, it's a lot less impactful. A lot of the capital improvements that we have to make are designed around max day and max hour, because we have to be able to provide, we don't have a choice, we have to provide water all the time for any use, including on top of fire. So, I mean, you have to do max day and fire, so if you can lower that max day, lots of times you can avoid adding a well or adding another elevated tank or something like that. So it's pretty significant, for sure.
Anything else? Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. All right, with that, we do not have executive session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Quick question,
Yes,
new business?
we don't have it on the agenda, but,
It's on there.
is it?
Sure
I
is.
skipped right over it. Sorry.
I have a question on the insurance. Employees now have to pay more because our insurance went up 30%. I would like to know how we came out to 30%. I mean, everybody that I talked to in the area went 8 to 10. I was told it was going to be 8 to 10 by Jeff. And all of a sudden, a month later, it comes out and we're paying 30%. Does that mean our quotes came out at 50% and 40% and we took the lowest at 30? Or where did the figures come from, I guess what I'm saying? 'Cause I haven't heard anybody in the area, and now I've got employees already saying, my insurance went up $50 a month. Are you guys going to give me a raise for $50 a month? And I'm kind of lost for words for them.
I can address our current provider, which is UHC, went up approximately 30%. We did go out and look at alternatives to UHC, and Blue Cross Blue Shield was one of those alternatives, and it was around the same amount. I just talked to, I didn't talk to all communities. I did just talk to one community that got almost the exact same increase as we did, a neighboring community. It depends upon a number of factors. One, which is the experience within our employee pool itself. So if somebody has a big claim for a particular purpose, that's going to be reflected in our rate. So it could differ greatly by organization.
True, but I can also see, we had years where guys had knee operations on the public works, and this year, besides Megan having a baby, I didn't see anybody else having any problem like Mr. Youngerman did with cancer. I didn't see any major problems with anybody. And do you go out for bid on this stuff? Or do you go to one primary broker, or how do they work? How do you work the brokerage, or how do you get the prices, I guess is what my question is.
We go out to one broker. We have a broker that we work with, and we got probably 50 different quotes from whether it,
The broker goes out and bids it in the market for us. Instead
Right.
of us doing that, the broker goes out and does that.
How many brokers do we go to get these prices?
We work with we can only work with one broker at a time.
Okay, and if you don't like that broker's price, you can't go to somebody else?
That's right, I agree with that.
No, I mean, you can switch brokers. You only have one broker at a time, so you can switch brokers, but by the time you get the price from them, because they won't quote it until we get to a certain time. The insurance companies won't give us a quote. And by the time they do, we can switch brokers for the next year. But once you're in with a broker, to get your quote, you're in with that broker for the year.
So the broker approached 50 different, or
probably approached 10 different insurance companies and got
They'll quote different plans to you.
5, 8, 10 different options from each insurance company. The hard thing is, whether you go to one broker or another broker, if you're going to Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to give you one number, whether it's broker A or B or C. You go to United Healthcare, they're going to end up with the same number at the end of the day, so.
They're looking at the same data, your experience, and the other things. They're looking at factors.
We're talking about switching. We're at United Healthcare now, correct?
Correct.
And we're talking about switching to Blue Cross Blue Shield, correct?
Correct.
We were with United Healthcare for 1 year, correct? Who were we with prior to United Healthcare? Why did we switch from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United
Because
Healthcare?
the year before, the quote from Blue Cross was so far above United Healthcare that we had to switch. We just financially, the village, we couldn't recommend taking the hit that the Blue Cross quote was.
Once we switched from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United Healthcare, what was wrong with United Healthcare now that we're switching back? I'm hearing something to the effect of their hidden fees.
I tell you that United Healthcare ain't worth a crap.
We worked with our broker before switching, and our broker said, we can switch to United Healthcare, this plan will be the same. You know, we relied on that, and we switched, and we found out there were things that were not the same. One thing, when you go to therapy, like if you've had an injury and you have to go to physical therapy, Blue Cross, you paid that copay the one
Right.
time you were done. United Healthcare, you had to pay a copay every time you went.
So United Healthcare actually ended up being more expensive than Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we had for, I think, what, 12 years?
I still don't, it still probably didn't end up being more expensive, no.
You do or do not think it would have been more
I think it
expensive?
probably was.
Okay.
I mean, certainly not to the village, now to the individual employee, I guess, depending on how many of those costs they had.
The Blue Cross Blue Shield that we're switching to now, how is that quote in relation to the quote that we got 2 years ago from Blue Cross Blue Shield?
So, no, I don't know that off the top of my
I
head.
don't know that off the top of my head. I can get that information.
Because I would think as an employee, it's a pain in the butt to go from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United Healthcare, back to Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's got to be something said for relationships. If we've been at Blue Cross Blue Shield for 12 years, obviously, we thought they were good enough for 12 years. All of a sudden, does it have to do with Obamacare?
Can't tell you what the reason for the increase, I mean, I don't know all the details of it. I mean, that probably has some effect. But there are years where there were other companies that came in lower than Blue Cross. We felt they were close enough, and the Blue Cross increase was reasonable, that we stayed, because, yeah, we don't want to be switching every year. Last year,
It was just
last
seemed
year, there was
totally
too big of a
unreasonable?
difference.
Okay.
We didn't feel we could do it. And we got complaints, and so that, this year, when we could get Blue Cross back close to what UHC was quoting us, we felt it was worth a switch back, because employees seemed to like Blue Cross, and the service they got better.
Okay.
I guess that was my point. When you're close, it's fine, but 30% ain't close. I mean, our employees are like,
Well, no, it's not close to our current rate, but it's close to UHC and Blue Cross both came back with 30%. I mean, they both came back
I
with
just
that.
don't know why they do it just with us, and I haven't heard of anybody being close to that.
I mean, there are.
I mean, you
some-
can ask people all around here, all the businesses, 8 to 10 because of Obamacare or whatever. They say, well, we're up 8 to 10% from last year, up to 8 to 10, fine. And like you said, in the beginning, it was that, and all of a sudden now it comes back a month later, 30, and I go, oh, these guys are gonna be real happy. Well, they are real happy, you know, it's,
I mean, there's so many factors going into it. There are years where we've had under 3%, and I've talked to some of our neighbors that have gotten 20, 25%. I mean, if I could predict what it's going to be each year and how they do it, I would probably get into a different line of work, but
Is, to get to your core point as well, did we get bad information from our broker? Should we be shopping for broker?
I mean, we can do that. That when we had the issue with UHC, we actually switched brokers because we felt,
Okay.
that relationship had gone, and so we moved to this new broker.
And this is the
Recently.
first year with the new broker, right? You switched to them earlier this
We
year.
switched to this broker in March or April of 2014.
I mean, in the broker we had previously, we had, one year we came in at 28%, the next year we came in at like 2.5%. I mean, like I said, some brokers may have a little more connection with a company to get you that last little percent or two, but pretty much they're all going to get the same quote, and they always go back and try and get it down for you, and some may have a little more experience at that, or maybe connections to get you an extra here or there, but generally the brokers are going to bring you back the same information, because they're going to the same place to get it.
Do we have to use a broker?
Wouldn't have to, I don't think. It's just, for us to go out, we don't have those connections or relationships with.
Because essentially a broker's a middleman, correct?
That we don't pay, right?
Correct.
Now,
Don't pay?
are we part of a pool, like I mentioned earlier?
We are not. We did.
Because I know, like, at work, we have a company that we contract with, a broker type, they handle, and we are now a part of, our 134 employees are part of a 3,000 employee pool that they go and get the rates for. So our rates can come down considerably.
Right, and
So I'm wondering if that's an option to
like we
look
do
at.
Micah now, we're part of a pool for our liability insurance property, that there are pools for health insurance. We have looked into them in the past. It's been a couple of years now. But that certainly is an option.
Yeah, because when I ran the rates for our PPO versus what I'm paying for work, and I think we're probably paying upwards of 20 or 30% as an employee contribution in my private sector versus, I don't know what we pay, 10,
10 now, it's going up to 11 with the new
yeah,
contract.
11%. So we're getting a much better rate because of that pool. So I think it might be something worth looking into in the future, seeing if there's an organization out there.
Yeah, Trustee Marisak we discussed this earlier, and I said the one pool we looked at in the past, the drawback we always had with them, well, the first time we went, our cost was better, even on our own. The second time we went back to them, the cost really was pretty good, but they required you to leave Blue Cross for a year. The first year in the pool, you couldn't be a Blue Cross member, and at that time, that was a deal breaker for us because the employees liked Blue Cross. So, but it's certainly something there are other pools out there too, so it's certainly something we can look into.
Yeah, because we look at it annually, and we've switched. And I'll mirror what Trustee Hines said about the other vendor, because we had them for a year as well, and it was pretty bad.
Any other items under new or unfinished? Apologize again for skipping that.
I have an item. I talked to Jeff about this a couple weeks ago. I noticed some posts on Facebook, and we've had some issues with unincorporated areas burning, but that's not my issue. My issue is about a week and a half ago, I turned down Griffin to head to my house, and I thought that there was a house on fire. And it's because Fox Valley Park District was doing the burning in, what's the park over by our house, Matt?
Stewart.
Over at, no,
Oh, behind my house, yeah.
Blackberry
Blackberry Park. And, you know, it just kind of coincided with the complaints that we had been getting with unincorporated.
That was actually,
And-
that's Lakewood Creek Pond. That's,
No, they were doing multiple areas. They did that one, I think, a couple days later. And so I stopped there, and, you know, with my background, I understand why it has to burn, they require the burning and that kind of thing. But I was amazed that they didn't call. They have to get their burn permit, and a burn permit is somewhat difficult to get. It's very specific. They have to notify the fire department that they're going to be burning, but for some reason, they don't notify the village, which is just asinine to me. I mean, it just, why wouldn't you notify the village that you're burning in? Just so, you know, maybe we can send out a Facebook blast or something saying, hey, they're going to be burning in this park. If you're susceptible to that kind of thing, you may not want to be home that day. You may want to make sure that all of your windows and everything are closed. It's just this communication that didn't occur, and it's not the village's fault, it's Fox Valley Park District's fault. And so when I stopped and I talked to this woman, I identified myself as a village trustee. She knew I had a horticultural background because of the car that I was driving, and she was still kind of crappy to me. So if someone, here I'm a trustee, I have a horticultural background, I told her I understand the reason for burning, and I accept that. All we want is communication. And if she's going to be crappy to me, how is she going to be to some other resident? So there's an issue there that I would like to see better communication from Fox Valley Park District if they're going to do something in our village.
They just
You know, I
did-
dealt with
They
this
just
last
did a
year.
controlled burn in Seasons Ridge, and I don't think they notified anybody, but they put this big, huge stop sign up. I don't know if they called the police department, but it said, do not call the fire department, I think it said. Didn't there, something, controlled burn, do not call the fire department. I mean, you could see this, you couldn't turn this corner without, you're probably lucky you didn't hit it. I don't know if they notified anybody in that area, but
You know, I dealt with this last year in the Orchard Prairie North basins, and if Mike were here, he would tell us about this, but I believe that P-zone notifies if it's our basins, the people who are immediately adjacent to that basin, they do notify them for asthma reasons. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, they just burned Arbor Ridge, and we get you get a door flyer that says they're gonna be burning and within so many days, and it's a certain, I forget the distance, but there is notification, at least in my case, so.
Thank you.
And that's in regards to Pizzo?
That's all.
And I would expect that from them. But Fox Valley Park District, it's adjacent to our houses. We never got anything.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's like a half mile from my house,
Yeah,
across that.
The park
thing.
right behind your house?
the Park District
No, on the-
pond.
It's on the other
is on
side
the
of the
other
playground.
s-
Yeah.
No. They were burning on the playground near our house. They were burning directly to the west of that. It was coming down Griffin. It was going across Route 30. And I honestly thought that there was a house on fire.
We can talk about this, and we can certainly talk to the Fox Valley Park District. I can, yeah, we'll chat about this, because I know the contractor that does those burns, so I can find that out. I can't believe that lady was rude to you. All you were doing was interrupting her while she was working.
How dare her?
God forbid.
So if there's no other comments,
And she wasn't working, she was standing there, so.
are there any other comments this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call the roll,
Third.
please.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Nice.
Hey, Rick, are you okay?